In this lesson, we're going to talk about the life cycles that we have in a view controller. There are many different life cycles, and they essentially define how a view controller goes through its different stages. So in this lesson, I will try to explain as many of them as I can for you. Let's go ahead into Xcode, and I'm going to make a new application. Let's call this one view controller view. Let's write the whole thing. View controller life cycles. So like that. And I'm sure by now you have definitely seen or have used the view did load, which is the default thing that we always have in here. Now, beyond that, there are so many other ones. And what I'm going to do in this lesson is I'm going to write all of them down, and then we're going to go ahead and print something in each of them to find out which one comes first. And then we're going to reorder them so we get a sense of what's happening. So another one is actually called view will appear. So view will appear, and that is super dot view will appear because it's a subclass of the view controller, of course. So let's see what view will appear does, and what's the difference between the ones that they say view something load or view something and appear. The difference between these two is this. In those that a view is loaded, essentially it means all of your objects are created, but they are not visible to user, or they're not going to be visible just yet. In the ones that they say view will appear or view did appear, it means that something is going to be visible or something has become visible. So I'm going to write it in here. View will soon be shown. And this is often useful for when right before transitioning into another view controller. This would be very useful for the moment that you're going to another view controller and you want to have something happening. Another life cycle that we have in here is view did appear. And obviously the name of it is suggesting what it does. This is essentially for when your view has loaded, all the objects are initialized, and now it is being shown on the screen to your user. So you might be wondering, what's the difference between view did appear and view load, and what should I use in view did appear? So when you load the view did load, essentially everything that you want has been initialized and allocated, but they are not being visible yet, and there might be a little time between that and when they are being, visible. So for instance, if you want to start a timer or run an animation, this would be a much better place, because there it will happen once things are being shown on the screen. Now, in saying that, there is a little bit of a downside and something that you have to be careful about. View did load happens just once, only once, in the life cycle of your application. So if you load an app and you go from one view controller to other one, this view did load only happens the very first time you're going to that view controller. But view did appear happens every time that that view controller is being shown. So if I go here to my storyboard, and imagine I have this main view controller that has a background with a color such as, since I have a new installation of Xcode, all my colors are gone, so I have to remake them. So we have this one with some sort of a green background, and I have another view controller, and this one I'm gonna maybe make it a little bit pink. Okay, so this is my other one. So the moment the app runs, this view controller is going to be loaded, and that's the last time that that cycle happens. And then when I have a segue and I go to the other one, whenever I go to the pink one, the view loads. Now, if I had a button to go back, when I come back to the green one, it is not the view did load anymore. It is the view did appear that happens over and over and over. So keep that in mind, that the view did load happens only once, while the view did appear happens each time you land in this view controller. So that's something that you have to keep in mind, because sometimes, you shouldn't try to initialize or allocate something in the view did appear, simply because it will run multiple times if you do that. Now, as you can imagine, view did appear simply happens after view will appear. And there's another one that happens somehow between these two or somewhere between these two. And that is the one that we call view did layout subviews. So, and this is super.view did layout subviews. This is essentially where all the pieces of the view are laid out. And what laying out means is something that we're going to talk about it a lot in the coming lessons in auto layout, but essentially means this. If you have an item, let's go ahead and say button, and this button is meant to be in this particular place. Let me put a background for it so I can see it. And this is now currently being designed for iPhone 8, and you're running your app on, let's say, iPhone X. So what should it do and where should it be laid out? So someone has to decide about that, and that is this life cycle. This is the one that decides. So based on the constraints, which currently we have none of, based on the constraints or some other programming, aspect of the application, where should I place this button? And the moment that that decision is made for everyone, this function essentially has been finished. View did layout subviews. So we talked about how view will appear often happens right before transitioning to another view controller. So, and if that is true, so what happens to the old view controller, the one that we just moved out of it? So for that, we have another one called view did disappear. And that is super.view did disappear. True. So this function, as you can imagine, happens right when a view is disappearing from the stack and we're moving to another view controller. And it's a very useful place to get rid of continuous work, for instance, or continuous tasks. Finally, we have a default thing that is often there that is called did receive memory warning. And that is super.did receive memory warning. And if this function happens, it means that your memory has exceeded the available memory of the device you're running on, and you might want to do something about it. If you have a cache of so many images, you might want to empty some of it, or you might want to do something that doesn't let your application crash. To be honest, this has never happened to me because most devices, they have about 4 to 8 gigabytes of memory, and it's very difficult to kind of crash them. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and write a little print in each of these so we know where we are as the app runs. So I'm going to say print. What do I want to print? View will appear. I'm going to put this one here, say this is view did disappear. This is did receive memory warning. And I will show you a way to essentially simulate this, so to force it to happen. View did layout subviews. Perfect. I'm going to copy that, put it in here, say view did appear, and the default one, which is view did load. So I'm going to copy that in here and view did load. So once we run the application, we should be able to see all of these, and then we're going to reformat this code so that we know which one happens when. Because I want to test the view did disappear, I'm going to go to my main storyboard. I'm going to get rid of that segue and say my button takes me to the other view controller. We are not doing anything on the pink one for now, so we only care about the green one. So let's run this application. And now that it's been loaded, we have these four happening here. View did load, view will appear, view did layout subviews, and view did appear. And these four are happening in the exact same order that we expected them to happen. So if we go in here, the first thing that's happening is that the view is loading. So I'm going to put this one at the very top. It doesn't really matter, but just for the sake of presentation, I'm doing this. So the very first thing is that the view did load. So every piece is now sitting next to each other and is properly allocated and initialized. The next thing is that view will appear soon. After that is view is laying out the subviews. So after view will appear, the view laid out the subviews, and then the view did appear, which is this one. So here, up there. Now, the next thing is you want to see when does the view did disappear happen. And that is if I tap on this button and says view did disappear because we went into the pink one. So that one is also successfully happening. And to do the receive memory warning one, like I said, there is a feature in here that you can actually simulate that. Simulate memory warning. And if you press that, it says did receive memory warning. So you can actually add code in here that does something when the memory warning happens. Maybe, like I said, emptying the cache, getting rid of some data, rereading your values, or whatever is the way to do that. So that's about the life cycle of a view controller. I think this little text in here best describes it, that it goes from view did load that allocates and initializes everything. Then it goes to view will appear, where everything is ready to be shown right before a view controller is shown. And that you have to keep in mind is not necessarily about the second view controller and so on. Even the very first view controller has to be shown at some point at the beginning. So view will appear will happen right before then. Then is about when the subviews are being properly laid out based on the constraints or auto layout or their programmatic values. Once all of these things are ready, the view will be in the state that it has appeared. The view did appear happens. That's when you see things. And when we go from one view controller to other one, view disappears. And of course, you might get a memory warning. So let's keep all of these in mind. When we come to our apps, we will be using these. A very important topic is you have to keep in mind that the view did load happens once. And that is when your view actually loads all of its objects. But all the other ones happen multiple times, depending on your navigation between different view controllers and so on and so forth. So let's keep that in mind and let's move on.